Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm joined by my friend Steve Smith. How you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm so thankful that you could be on the show today. Uh, we are going to talk about a variety of different topics. We were just having a discussion off mic, so I think folks are really in for a treat. But Steve, for the odd case that no one knows who you are, you mind giving us kind of the spiel of who Steve Smith is and what you've been working on?
Sure. So I'm Steve Smith. I go by Ardalis online because Steve Smith is one of the more generic names out there. And there's a bunch of us, even in the dev space. So you'll find me on Twitter, GitHub, YouTube, wherever as Ardalis. I do software consulting and training. I have a company called Nimble Pros that my wife and I run with a small team. We help companies write better software faster. We're working with a lot of companies now that have legacy .NET apps that they're trying to move to the cloud or move to .NET 8. And that's, a good opportunity for us because we can help them redesign their apps and learn better practices along the way and really add a lot of value to these companies that already have working software but want to make it better. I've been doing training for a long time, since 2002 or so. I've been doing independent training for software development teams and on Pluralsight since about 2010, which makes me one of the more seasoned authors there. And just published my latest course less than a month ago on refactoring to solid C# code, which takes some pretty nasty real world looking code and looks at how to refactor that kind of stuff. So that's it for me for now, I think.
Let's talk about Ardalis. What's the origin of that name?
Sure. I had a tabletop role playing game that I was playing in back in the 90s, and I had a paladin character, and I came up with a name, and I just named him Ardalis. And he was one of my favorite characters, and I was playing with him for a while with our group. And then around that time, Blizzard was coming out with games like Diablo and Blizzard Online and stuff. So I needed a name for that. So I was like, I'll just be Ardalis because trying to get S. Smith or something is a fool's errand. So eventually I just kept using it for various things because it was usually available. And so it became my sort of online identity. And I answer to Ardalis now because that's just kind of my brand. I have ardalis.com and all that. So
I love it because you were mentioning, Steve Smith. It's a I always say that's a common name.
yeah.
We were having a conversation a couple episodes ago with James Q Quick, and he was talking about he uses the Q very specifically because if you were ever to Google for James Quick, numerous other people other than him show up in the search results.
Right. I
And
I used to have the top result for Steve Smith, but that was a long time ago.
long time ago, uh, do do you find? I know you've been running a website, your blog for a lot of years.
Mhm.
Are a lot of your incoming searches specifically that people are searching for? What does Ardalis say about X?
Well, they don't show you the search terms anymore in the analytics
Not
like
like
they
they
used
used
to.
to.
So
Yeah.
it's hard to say. Um, but yeah, I mean, I get a lot of hits for things that are articles I wrote many, many years ago. And some of my most popular posts are not even really development related. It's like how to do this stupid thing in Excel. Like, that one always gets a ton of traffic every month.
It's always the stuff that you don't think is going to be big traffic, but over time it
Right.
adds up,
Right.
pays dividends.
And there's a much bigger audience of people that use Excel than that are like .NET developers, right? By
Yeah.
orders of magnitude. So of course it gets a lot of traffic.
Well, let's start the conversation about Nimble Pros. You gave me a little bit of a primer earlier, but let's talk about how Nimble Pros kind of got its start and what is it built into today.
Sure. So we're on Nimble Pros 2.0 now because we kind of restarted it. But the original company was founded, I think, in 2008. And at the time, my wife and I were running an advertising company that catered to developer websites. And so we had a website called aspalliance.com that some folks may remember. It was kind of before people had blogs and things. It was a place to publish articles. And we had ads on there from various component vendors and Microsoft would advertise there and stuff. And we started an ad company sort of managing these ads for that site and a bunch of similar sites. And it became our full-time company. And around then, I was getting into speaking at conferences, and it wasn't unusual that people would come up to me after a conference talk and say, "Hey, that was really great. Can you help us with that in our company?" And I would have to say, "No, I don't do that consulting thing. I've got this company, and we sell ads and whatever." And it seemed pretty obvious after a few of those. That's like, we're leaving money on the table. How could we capitalize on this? And at the same time, we were struggling trying to build our features as fast as we wanted to for the ad business, because we're competing with like Google and other places that do ads. And so it was hard for a small shop to keep up. And so we got the idea that we would just start a consulting company, and we'd be able to take on these folks that wanted consulting. And when our consultants weren't busy with other clients, they could be building the ad software for the ad company. And that worked pretty well for a few years. Ultimately, we ended up selling the ad company in 2009. And that was to the Code Project. And I went and worked for them for a couple of years. And Michelle ran Nimble Pros for a few years there. And then right as I was wrapping that up and coming back to Nimble Pros, we sold Nimble Pros to Telerik. And Telerik, bought the company, and we went and worked for them for a few years until they got acquired themselves by Progress, and they spun off the consulting arm and basically just let everyone go. So a few years passed, all our team went and worked at different places. And then, we started picking up some of them again. I was working myself just under the Ardalis name at that point. I was Ardalis Services. But then we rebranded back to Nimble Pros a few years ago. So, and we have a few of our previous members have come back and rejoined.
How big is your team?
There's 10 of us right now.
10 of us? Okay. For a lot of people getting started, one of the hardest questions to answer is, I want to start consulting. I want to start freelancing. Where do I find clients? How do I get started finding clients? How do people know what I offer? If
Right.
if you were to give advice to someone that's starting fresh, w- what's the best way to find some of those initial clients?
Sure. I mean, I'm always trying to find clients also, right?
Yeah.
That task only gets harder as you grow because you have more and more mouths to feed, and people to keep busy. But the advice that I would give you from the start is to get as much content out there that is establishing yourself as an authority on a particular task, on a particular problem. Ideally an expensive problem, right? A problem that companies want to throw money at to solve. And that is the best way to get yourself to stand out from other people. Because if you just try and market yourself as, "Hey, I'm a JavaScript developer," or "I'm a front end developer," "I'm a .NET developer," right? That no one needs a .NET developer, right? They need a developer that knows their particular set of circumstances, their domain, their stack, their tech, right? They don't need a front end developer. They need, the best React developer around that can come in and clean up all the mess they've made with their React application, right? And so if you bill yourself as like, "I build React applications right," or "I fix React apps," or, I make Entity Framework, run right and fast. Like, now you're talking, because now you've got a value that you bring that isn't just generic and isn't just off the shelf. And the way you establish that is through content, I think. So you should be writing blogs, or you should be on YouTube, or you should be on Twitter, or ideally all of the above. But, pick whatever the easiest ones are for you to do, and find a way to get your content out there, which will help people, which will help you, because as you develop content, you have to really understand it, or at least understand it better, in order to articulate it to people, right? In order to share it in a meaningful way. And so there's a quote I love called, "To teach is to learn twice."
Mhm.
And so, like, every time you write a blog post or you make a YouTube video or something, you show someone how to solve some problem, your understanding of that problem increases, right? So it's helping you, and of course, helping other people, and elevating their trust in you and their understanding that you're an authority. You know what you're talking about. You're that guy that, or girl that, has that blog or has that, book that you wrote or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I love that advice. I've seen that with a lot of stuff I've written and courses I've done on. So we're talking .NET. I've done a lot around signal art and real time web,
Mhm.
and the number of engagements I've pulled in specifically because of articles and courses I've built is kind of astounding. Like, you say it out loud, and people say, "That's great advice. That's never going to work for me," but it totally works if you put the time and the effort into it. Oh, go ahead.
There's a book I'd recommend, called Content Marketing, or Inbound Marketing. I think there's actually a couple books, but both of those ideas, if you just Google for them, are great. And the general idea about that type of marketing versus outbound marketing and like advertising and pay for click ads and things like that, is that if you're in the pay for click business, and you just, you optimize your Google ad spend every month, you're at the mercy of someone who doesn't know how to do that and doesn't know the value of things, but has a bunch of money showing up and just completely derailing your strategy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they got a bunch of investment money from some sponsor or some startup, and they're like, hey, I've got $1 million. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to buy all these keywords, right? And they just blow you out of the water because now all the keywords that you'd highly optimized for overnight, they're 10 times as expensive, right? With content marketing, that'll never happen, right? If you have a bunch of content that all establishes you as an authority, and you got a bunch of traffic coming to you because of that content, no one's going to just overnight get rid of that, except maybe Google if they change their algorithm and decide to like drop your website or something. But you're not going to be at the mercy of somebody else's ad spend.
It's interesting because I just read an article. It was a Hacker News or Reddit thread, and they were talking about how someone went to one of their competitors, pulled their sitemap, and had AI write targeted articles to everything that they were ranking for. And over the course of a couple weeks, stole a whole bunch of ranking on certain keywords. So
So maybe it is getting easier to steal even the
it
content
might be
marketing
getting
side. But
easier, but it's not going to be high quality stuff.
right,
And I think
right.
that's the real key is if you're writing anything, like your stuff is really high quality. I see your stuff referenced everywhere. And that's the type of level that you want to get to. You want to get to the point where someone goes, I know exactly what you need for a particular problem. Go read this post that Ardalis posted because he talks about it. Go scroll about halfway down. And because I think a lot of posts, and you do this often, they're these tomes of here's how you solve these hard problems
Hmm.
that the documentation isn't covering.
Right.
So do you have your site and you also have Nimble Pros? Does Nimble Pros put out its own articles and
Yeah, it's got
you
a
do
separate
your own
blog.
articles?
Yep. And I
Uh,
publish some things on Nimble Pros, but most of the stuff I still post to mine, just out of habit more than anything. And I've got my own brand and following and stuff. So
yeah.
Nimble Pros has its own YouTube channel, its own blog. It's got its own set of things, and most of our employees do their things there. And we're looking to build that up more, and then in 2024, uh, actually using stuff like what we're doing right here with Squadcast or Riverside FM or other tools
Yeah.
like that. It makes it easier to do more dynamic, group based, discussion based videos, which I'd like to get into more.
Yeah, that sounds fun. There's not enough of that out there, at least from people that really know what they're doing.
Right. It can be hard for folks that aren't comfortable presenting their ideas in public to say, well, you should just go start a YouTube video, like our YouTube channel. Like, what? Where do I even start? That's crazy. Like, that's way out of a lot of developers' comfort zone. But if you were to say, hey, you want to just come on camera and, spend 20 minutes talking about how you did X with, that problem, then like, yeah, I can do that. I don't have to do any of the work. I just have to show up and talk and, hopefully not sound like an idiot. And we can always edit it later. It's not live. And so that lowers the bar quite a bit. So that's part of why I'd like to delve more into that with Nimble Pros, because I can have various team members or even clients, if they're up for it, come on and just let's talk about this cool thing we did, and not have it be as big of a hurdle to do.
I think imposter syndrome factors into it a lot as well
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I I feel like a lot of things I should write about, that I should do videos on, that I should potentially do courses on. I f- the hard problems that I come around solving, I don't want to write this article and saying this is how I solve this problem, and I feel really smart at the end, and then have someone come in and go, "Why'd you do all that? You could have just done X." And
Hmm.
so take my days or weeks or months worth of time, pain,
Hmm.
and experience and dwell it down to, well, if you had just done this one little thing, you wouldn't have had to worry about all that. Like, that's my biggest fear
Yeah.
is someone coming in and being a little bit smarter than me
Right.
and kind of showing me that I was completely wrong. Which I guess is a good thing, right? If
I
we
mean,
get
yeah,
to the
like
end.
if you stood out, back from it for a minute and you thought about like, well, the worst possible outcome is that you learn a better, easier way to do the thing. Like,
Exactly.
that's not that bad. Like, okay, guess what your next blog article is? Hey,
Yep.
I tried that suggestion and you know what? It works. And here's how you do it the easy way. Like, that's just run with it. Everybody's learning all the time. Nobody knows it all.
Well, let's pivot a little bit to speaking of learning, let's talk about some of your coursework with Pluralsight. So you've been with Pluralsight for a very long time. You said you were kind of one of the original group of folks. How many courses have you done with Pluralsight?
Ooh, don't know.
Oh, I asked you the hard question.
It's been a few. In fact, at the moment, there's a bug on their site that doesn't even show all my courses. So if I go to their thing, it's not going to show my most recent one, but it says 24. Oh, and it is there. Oh, they fixed it. Okay, so yeah, 24
24.
courses.
So I
Which-
think the kind of the question we throw back and forth on the podcast, and a lot of people in our Discord as well, is doing a course for a marketplace like Pluralsight's a really good marketplace
Mhm.
versus doing something self-published on your own, or um, there's even these new little like off skirt uh, marketplaces that will do a little bit of the marketing stuff for you, but you still own 100% of the content.
Mhm.
Uh, so all your courses have been primarily through Pluralsight. How has the experience of working through Pluralsight been for you? And for 24 courses, I assume it's been pretty good.
It's been mostly good. Yeah, there's been things that along the way that have annoyed me or rubbed me the wrong way. Um, Overall, it's been very, very profitable for me. And part of that is because I got in at the right time. Part of that is that I chose the right topics. Uh, uh, a, a thing that I strategically did that looking back at really paid off was to choose evergreen topics that have a long tail that don't have a version number attached to them. So, if I do a course on solid principles, they're not going to come out with solid principles version 2 next year and version 3 the year after that. Whereas if I'm trying to talk about Angular or React, it's like, no one's going to watch that course after 2 years because there's going to be a newer, better version of it that's come out. And I'm going to have to constantly be redoing the same course over and over just to keep up instead of finding new courses that can kind of expand my reach. Um, so that was part of my success, I think, is attributed to that decision. And in Pluralsight's just done a tremendous job of getting market share, acquiring competitors, and doing other things. They've had some rocky times themselves with layoffs, and they went public and then they went back private, and that's had some organizational changes and things. But on the whole, it's been a very successful company and a very successful relationship with me overall.
From a topic standpoint, how flexible have you been kind of choosing what topics you want to do? Is that mostly guided by your intentions or what Pluralsight is specifically looking to cover? Like a traditional book publisher might.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be an overlap there of things I know and things I want to talk about and things
Yeah.
Pluralsight thinks that their audience wants to get more of. And in the early days, it was easier because they just wanted content. They were like, whatever you want to do, talk about it. Like, we need to build up our library so we can sell the subscription to people and they'll see that we have a bunch of stuff and we're getting new stuff all the time. And so in the earlier days, 2009, 2012, in there, it was easier to pick your topics. And then as Pluralsight grew and became more popular both with their audience, but also with authors, the available spaces in which you could find content started to get tougher. Like everybody had kind of staked out their area. And it wasn't unusual that someone would publish a course that really like stepped on somebody else's toes. And that author didn't even know that was coming. And it was, it caused some animosity or some surprise that, suddenly Pluralsight would publish this thing when like, I already have this thing. Why are you publishing a thing that destroys my thing?
Hmm.
And that's hard, right? If you were Pluralsight, if you're in their shoes, like it's difficult to thread the needle on that sometimes because you want to have new content. You want to focus the content on, different audiences. Like maybe there was a course for C#, but now we have one for Java or whatever. Um, Even if it's conceptually the same thing, they could still support having two courses on it. Um, so there was some of that, but overall, I've had the most say on what I wanted to talk about. I sometimes had to, make it fit into what they were looking for. An example would be at one point I did a talk on or a course on refactoring for Azure. And you know what, refactoring for Azure isn't really any different than refactoring period. Like it doesn't matter if you're using Azure, it's just refactoring, you're making the code work better. But they really wanted one for Azure because Microsoft was pushing them to build this Azure skill tree, this learning path. And so they wanted to have that in that learning path, and it had to have for Azure, like be that focused. And so I did that because they asked me to. And I wanted to be in that path that, ostensibly was going to have all these people beating a path to it. Um, and it was fine, right? And it was largely similar to other refactoring courses I'd already done, but designed a little bit more with Azure in mind. So there's some times when I've done stuff for more at their request than what I wanted to do, but it was still in the domain of things that I generally would talk about.
Do you think there's room for someone who's never done a course before, might be getting their start in the community, go into something like Pluralsight, or should they start looking at doing content elsewhere and then eventually try to graduate to Pluralsight?
There's a bar to get into Pluralsight. I mean, they don't just take anyone that wants to. They have you have to submit a video and some other things, and some of it's just purely mechanical. It's like are you able to articulate clearly? Do you have a decent microphone? Is your recording
Yeah.
setup correct? All that stuff. And even that weeds out a bunch of people, I'm sure. And there's people that really want to do it that will submit over and over again until they get it right. So just because they say no once, I wouldn't be discouraged forever, right? Fix whatever feedback they give you and come back in 3 or 6 months and try again. I certainly wouldn't argue against trying to submit for Pluralsight, but even if you are accepted as an author, they only have a limited selection of things that they're looking for right now. And it might not be what you're good at or what you want to teach. So, I wouldn't caution against getting in there and seeing what they have available for topics and seeing if it's anything that you want to talk about. But if there's not, don't sit and wait until that becomes true. Like go do your thing somewhere else. That's the more important thing is to produce the content and build that audience of people that see that you know what you're talking about.
One of the things I really like about Pluralsight, and I think I kind of want to talk about for anyone that might be interested in building a course, is Pluralsight authors do a really good job of telling the story of working with a technology or trying to solve a series of problems. What type of process do you have for setting up an outline, telling that story, figuring out what videos you have to record, what order you have to record them, and getting that information in a way that people can actually learn?
Sure. These days, Pluralsight is a lot more prescriptive about that than they used to be. So they will, is as part of their process, they will have an outline and they will just ask you to kind of fill in some pieces of it, and then they'll have a tech editor kind of look it over and verify that it's the right stuff they want to cover. And they may have certain keywords that they want you to hit. They may have certain learning objectives that they want to hit because they've been talking to their customers, and their customers are saying, "Hey, we really want our employees to know X, Y, and Z." And so those XYZ bullet points become learning objectives for your course. And that wasn't always the case. I mean, it used to be authors had a lot more, it was more author driven of what the story was and how you wanted to tell it. And there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but they do kind of force you to do some of that thought up front. So, you do have an idea going in of this is how many modules there's going to be, and here's the different sections within those modules. And that kind of is the outline of the course, from that standpoint. And then they've got data that tells you things like, how long should modules be? How long should demos and clips be? And you can kind of bend those rules if you need to, but it's sort of like, your general guidance is that they should be, between X and Y minutes long and things like that. So that kind of helps guide you toward a more consistent product that, is generally going to be successful with their audience.
Has there been any course that you've done on Pluralsight, and actually, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, that you thought about maybe doing as your own self-published course or taking to another platform?
Well, that did happen when .NET Core was first coming out. I was doing a lot of work with the documentation for ASP.NET Core when it was new, when it was still beta. It was called Project K, and wasn't called Core or anything yet. And one of the reasons why I was doing that was because I really wanted to get into having one of those fundamentals courses, having ASP.NET Core fundamentals. Because then, and even today, those courses get a lot of views on
Yeah.
Pluralsight, and that's how you get paid, is by how many people watch your course. And so, I really wanted to be the authority on ASP.NET Core when it was new, when everybody was going to jump in and try and learn it, so I could get that fundamentals course. And when at that time, when Pluralsight was thinking about what they wanted to do, they basically said, well, we're going to have this RFP process, and we're going to have a blind selection based on proposals that we get, and we'll pick whichever one has the best proposal and not consider who the author is. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? Right. Like I'm the guy, I'm the one writing the documentation for this. So I've been doing it for like a year. And whatever random person writes a proposal that you happen to like better, if somebody else writes a better proposal, tell me what's in it and I'll do that. Right. But I know what I'm doing. Um, and then the other thing was they said, well, we're not actually going to do a fundamentals course. We're going to do a bunch of little courses that are broken up, and we're not going to let anybody do, ASP.NET Core stuff unless they're part of this path that we're prescribing and creating. And we're going to be super strict about it. And then, I didn't get the course that I wanted, the intro course. And then I also, around that same time, like as it's launching, another author published a big long course on how to build a website and had done it all with ASP.NET Core. Right. And it wasn't an ASP.NET Core course, but it was still like an ASP.NET Core course. Right. And I was like, oh, wait, I thought we weren't doing that. Oh, well, they got special permission. Like, what? Right. So that kind of thing kind of rubbed me the wrong way, to the point that I was like, you know what? I'm going to make my ASP.NET Core course because I really want to do this. And so I did go and self-publish it. In fact, my wife and I and two other co-founders, we started a training company called DevIQ, and DevIQ still exists. It's a domain I've had for a long time. And it's a reference site, but for a couple of years there, it was also a training company and had some courses on it. And so we worked on that for a couple of years.
So how did the course on DevIQ work?
Well, it took me a few months to build the thing, right? I had to come up with a new theme and slide templates and everything because it had to have its own look and brand and all that. And then I built this course, ASP.NET Core Quick Start. Built a homepage just for that course as a landing page to drive people to it. Sold it for a reasonable price. I forget if it was like $50 or $75 or 90 or something like that. It wasn't terrible. And I was able to get almost a dozen people to buy it per month for like, a year or two. And, that was not great. And the thing that was really galling is while we're working on this for a couple of years and we're trying to build this company and try and build content for it and try and get third-party content, every quarter I would get a check from Pluralsight for the courses I'd done prior to that. And those checks were getting bigger, even though I wasn't recording anything new, even though it was old content. The checks were still getting bigger because Pluralsight was still acquiring more customers and getting more subscribers. And I was just, thinking, you know what, if I'd published another course on Pluralsight, I would have, had even more money. And so eventually, DevIQ was not making enough money, and, it didn't turn out to be a good long-term, company. And part of that was because it was being done by 4 people as a side project. Nobody was all in. We didn't have anybody that was dedicated to marketing. We didn't have any third-party money that was, helping us get marketing or do any kind of advertising or anything like that. And so bootstrapping that kind of company and that kind of environment with that kind of competition was really tough. And so, things have changed a little bit today. In fact, the newest training company on the block that I know of is Dome Train that Nick Chapsis is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's having more success than we had with DevIQ, but largely that's because Nick has over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube and is able to drive a sizable number of them to those courses. So, I'm actually doing a course, for him, on modular monoliths that I'm going to have, early next year.
Looking forward to that. I've heard Nick promoting it, and I haven't looked at any of the courses yet, but it's on my short list to go pick a couple of them up. Really touching on what I think the essence of your whole DevIQ journey is, it's all in marketing. Like, as
Mm-hmm.
developers and technologists, it's really easy for us to build things,
Right.
and it's hard for us to market things. And it's hard for us to go out and say, here's a thing I built, please go buy it.
Right.
And it definitely is a benefit to some of these marketplaces, whether you're using Pluralsight or someone else, is that they do a lot of the marketing for you,
Right.
and yeah, you get a reduced cut for
Yep.
the work you've done. But yeah, say 10,000 people go through your Pluralsight course. How much work do you have to do to get 10,000 people to go through your DevIQ course?
Right.
And it's probably exponentially more effort,
Right.
and you have other
Yeah.
things to work on.
And Pluralsight can say, hey, just buy this subscription for $29 a month or whatever, and you've got, 10,000 courses. You could pick and choose whatever you want, as opposed to like, hey, here's this one-off website with one course that, you can buy. And it's not just the subscription-based ones. You're competing with Udemy too, who's going to be, taking a similar course and making it 90% off one day.
Yeah.
just because, and people know that, so they'll wait for the sale. And so it's tough if you are not already a well known big name in the topic area that you're at. It would be difficult for most people to just jump in and do that. And there are people that do it successfully, like Nick is one, and Tim Corey is another, where they've built up a large audience on YouTube, where they have a fan base. They have people that trust them and know that they're an authority on what they talk about, and then they can go and sell training, right? But if you try and sell the training first and nobody knows who you are, good luck, right? It's
Yeah.
going to be a tough road.
I think we've said it before on the podcast, not we all can't be a West boss
That's right.
and just put out a course one day and buy a Ferrari the next. It's not how it works.
Yeah, to become an overnight success takes years.
So, kind of talking along the way, has there been anything that you've started work on? And we talked about DevIQ that didn't work. Has there been anything else that you started that didn't quite work out the way that you wanted it to?
I have tons of ideas of businesses or websites or projects that we're working on all the time, and most of them never turn into anything. There's all kinds of like internal utilities that we build for like Nimble Pros. That I'm like, you know what? I'll bet a bunch of other people could use this too. What if we just made this a software as a service? And it's easy to build an internal tool that only you have to use and know. It gets a lot harder when it's like, okay, but now we have to support licensing and we have to make sure the thing is up all the time. And, turning something into a product is a much bigger lift. And that's hard when you've got clients that, are paying the bills and want your folks to be working on that. So, that's been a challenge for me. And I would say a failure of being able to actually produce, an actual product. I've been successful with open source stuff. I've got lots of NuGet packages out there that have lots of downloads, but actually selling something or even getting something where you have to sign up, even if it's free, right? I don't have anything like that yet, and that's something that I'd like to eventually be able to do is build a SaaS product or just a product that we could sell licenses for, as opposed to selling hours or something like that.
I'm the same way. If I could get away from selling hours, my life would be so much easier. Quote, so much easier.
Right.
I'm definitely in that camp. So, Steve, what's next? What's your next big initiative thing you like to spend your time on?
I'm learning more and more about modular monoliths and how that ties into microservices and clean architecture. And between those three things, that's where most of the applications of the folks I talk to kind of fall. A lot of folks are still into microservices, and you can build successful microservices. In fact, one of the products I want to build is in that space. But most companies and most applications don't need that. And so teaching people how to build maintainable monoliths or modular monoliths, if you will, is something I've become increasingly passionate about, and that's part of why I'm doing that course for Dome Train. And that's kind of what I'm focused on right now in my training is clean architecture and modular monoliths. Um, and then just trying to keep helping developers write better software. I'm having fun with my YouTube channel. Started doing more of that here in Q4 of 2023. And it's kind of cool to see that kind of pick up because I've only been doing it for a little while. I've got like 5 videos published in the last 3 months or something, but starting to get like a regular cadence of trying to publish one a week and really seeing the views start to tick up and getting a bunch more subscribers. So that's always nice, right? The vanity metrics help.
Then you get enough YouTube subscribers, you don't need Dome Train anymore. You just go
That's right.
release
Yeah,
your own thing,
that's right.
and the circle of life has completed itself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. As soon as I get, a 250,000 subscribers like Nick has, that shouldn't take any time at all. I'm
Yeah,
at like
you got time.
5,500 now. So I'm what, 2% of the way there.
You have more than 0,
Hmm?
which I think is a good starting point, and, like, 5,500 is nothing really to squawk at. Like, I
Right.
think mine that I don't do any effort on has 1,000, and but there's a number of people out there that have 5, and 4 of those are bots, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And they're happy just kind of doing the building blocks of YouTube channel. So I wish you
The,
luck, and we'll make sure we put your YouTube channel in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go subscribe to Ardalis and learn some more about .NET Cloud and uh, modular monoliths, I like that term because I think that describes what we're doing on our team right now. And And so I might pick your course up as soon as you're done with it. So go
Awesome.
go work on it.
That's right.
Steve, anything else we haven't talked about?
Well, we didn't talk about other non-tech businesses, which we could if you want, but I know we're getting long here. So that could be a quick topic if you wanted. Uh, Other than that, no, I think we're good.
All right. Let's spend a minute on non-tech businesses, just kind of as an overview.
Yeah. So a couple things that we've done, my wife and I, is we needed an office for our company, and we rented it first, and then we kind of outgrew that space. The key thing we ran out of was parking spots, and so we went looking for other offices to rent, and we came across this somewhat dilapidated building that was a bunch of small offices with already had tenants and some vacancies. And it was really cheap. It was, way less than, most of the other office buildings in the area. Uh, and it was so cheap that we almost couldn't pass it up. So we ended up buying it. And even though it was a little bit of a money pit to fix up, it was nice that it already had existing tenants because we were able to put Nimble Pros in there. And we would be in one space, we'd be renovating some other space, we'd have tenants in another space, and then we'd have everything shift around and move so that we could, keep renovating different parts of the building as we moved around and as tenants moved around. And having the tenants, it was like if you were to buy a duplex and live in one and rent out the other, where like they're kind of paying your mortgage. That was what we were doing, but on a commercial tenant space. So those other tenants were paying a good chunk of the mortgage. So it wasn't as expensive for the business as it would have been for us to just go buy a building or even just to go rent. It was cheaper than what we were paying in rent at the end of the day, not counting the upfront cash cost. And we did something similar with a vacation rental where after the housing bust, we were lucky to find a vacation rental that was having a short sale. And so we bought it for significantly less than the previous owner had bought it for like 3 years earlier. And then, renting that out, there's a rental company that handles everything. And it kind of like pays for its mortgage and everything from the rentals. So, it doesn't make us a lot of money, but it does at least cover its own costs. And so over time, we're just building that equity.
And it sounds like it's all part of a bigger financial strategy. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's all about residual income, right? So we don't want to be in a position where if suddenly one thing dries up, the rental commercial rental market tanks or something like, oh no, that's not where all our eggs are, right? Or if I can't find any business for consulting, like we've still got other income coming in from other streams. Be very unlikely that all of them would suddenly disappear overnight. So yeah, it's all a hedge against future uncertainty.
I think that's also, I think it's really good for folks out there to hear that successful people usually have a couple different things going on. They're not putting all the eggs in one basket because, like you said, you never know what's going to happen to this economy. Um, but with all that said, Steve, anything to promote before we wrap up?
No, just YouTube course and or YouTube channel and some of the courses I'm working on would be great to get more people checking those out.
Yeah, we'll get links to all those, and so Steve can get the checks in the mail. Well, Steve, I appreciate having you on the show, and we'll have to have you back in a year or so and see how your new courses on Dome Train are doing. And with that, everyone, thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week. You've been listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. I really hope that this podcast has been useful for you. If it has, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you get your podcast from. And don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here. Join us on our Discord at mti.to/discord. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin, and we'll see you next week. Cha-ching!